have just gone way beyond what my thought is.
Excuse me, I know we're not allowed to
You're
discuss.
not, I'm sorry.
I
One
di-
person does. And
She
the
asked
other
a
person-
question and I didn't hear
Did
the
you address
answer.
her? Okay, ask me a question.
You
It's
asked,
how a conversation goes in the
no,
meetings. We-
she asked a question and you're not talking loud enough to hear. You asked if anyone had contacted the health department because they were supposed to solicit. Did you get an answer to
The
that?
answer is yes, the
Yes.
health department has been questioned.
We've had,
And anymore, and really, we're not, it's no public comment, am I correct? And we decided if the public wants to start comment, we can adjourn and move the meeting to another day. And just defer progress, which I think we have the ability to gain some progress. It may be anything over, again, I'm not trying to pick numbers, but I mean, there's a slew of numbers that go through from distances that should be increased, setback from tunnel fans, and HUAs, which are your heavy use areas, manure sheds, and if there's 400 foot of woods in between and a development on the other side, you know, depending, again, it's on a case by case basis, and I think we've ignored that in this county to have the power and the right to look at something and say, well, this actually does make sense, and those numbers don't, and it doesn't require such a big battle. Now, if we have 6 or 5 houses go up and all the neighbors show up and say we hate it, well, then guess what? Then we actually have the power to say, there's only 4 going there. We're not taking rights away completely from people. We're just trying to do smart growth, and until we can go ahead, if you want to come up with something better. But I think with as fast and as deep as the poultry industry is in our county and on the Eastern Shore, it behooves us and everyone else to try and work together to it'll make people who are building chicken houses think before they do it. And that's the whole point, is try and make people think. And if they're not thinking about their neighbor, then we actually get to say, you know what, that's not very nice. So we're going to say no.
So you're right, so that's your recommendation. Yeah, I heard from you, without following that.
well, I see merit in both of them, but, you know, one bad poultry house put in the wrong place is wrong. It doesn't make it good because it's 1 or 2. So I see that point of view. But these are honest, hardworking people. Like the word moratorium sends chills down my back, and the PR from that,
Something else
the
that.
PR from that would resonate throughout the Northeast almost.
Case by case basis.
You know, I don't think somebody needs a swimming pool and have feathers from the tunnel fans blowing them every day. But I don't think when you move to Somerset County, you should not expect to smell chicken manure.
Amen.
Between those facts, I can't tell you that if you put up 2 houses, you only need 5-foot trees, but if you put up 4, you need 8-foot trees. It's almost a site-by-site plan for all of them if you're gonna go to that point. And when you do that, you get so much politics and you get so much involved in it that it's gonna take a 10-month process, 14 months.
Here, Kenny.
And there's got to be a compromise here somewhere, and I think we'll find it. But you gotta weigh all that together.
And we won't find it tonight.
But, you know, I don't want somebody coming to me and saying, you let them build that chicken house and I gotta get feathers out of my pool 3 days a week because of those tunnel fans. I don't think the setback for the tunnel fans is far enough away from our residents.
Well, I had a whole list. I actually went to the bottom of my page because of the.
But there's so many other factors that you put in with the landscaping and the size of the landscaping. There's nothing that's talked about dust control as far as truck traffic and if you're on a paved road versus we still have some dirt roads in Somerset County. You know, when you look at the whole issue, a moratorium and us giving us a date, that, you know, I don't know that.
So what do you?
I mean, there's a lot of questions that before you move into that.
What do you want to do, Kevin? One time, tell us, what do you want to do? Make a decision. Where are you running?
I got a conflict of interest though.
Right, that's why we needed a stakeholders panel. That's why we asked for a stakeholders panel, which we didn't get.
List of things you want.
I mean, some of the questions that have to be answered, and this is the education part of the conversation is, it was stated in the last meeting, 25% of the maximum lot coverage requirement, for a parcel. So you can't exceed 25% of the coverage. And I think I know the answer, but that's just for the building,
Yes.
the buildings themselves.
So it's building lot coverage.
Does that
Okay.
include manure sheds?
No, it would
Yes.
include manure
Any
sheds.
kind of building.
But it doesn't include the road.
And here's the other thing. Well, I mean, and in ag, for a long time, I mean, the stone driveways have not been considered impervious. But I believe based on, I don't want to ask a question because I don't want to open it up to the room.
In the Crook area, they would be.
Yeah,
But that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of things that would come into play, but maybe we make sure that we say, okay, because honestly, on every poultry house that's being built, we need to consider that it's not just a poultry house. We've got a 50-foot extension off the front. So it's 100 foot longer technically, and when you're taking it in, and it really needs to come into play when you're building next to residences. And that's why I said it case by case, but we can create a moving scale. And I'm gonna list an example, not what I'm recommending, but as an example. I had said this before, make it a 400-foot setback. Right now, we're at 200, that's double, okay? And again, these are numbers that I'm picking out, but if they go ahead, and that's with a required 50-foot vegetative buffer, and then allow them to reduce that down to 300 if they're gonna put in a 150-foot buffer. Because I can tell you, and I've said this to most of us here, I'd rather be 300 feet away with 150 foot of trees buffered in between me than just a clear 400 feet. And then right now we're at 200, and remember, I'm basing this off of including the pads, because the heavy use areas, the concrete pads on the ends, they're the ones that actually get your traffic when you're moving birds out. Your feed trucks are using them, so it's been brought up that they're going to end up being included anyway. So we might as well just figure it in. But that makes 250 foot, 200 foot buffer. Because if you've got 200 foot of a natural vegetative buffer, and it would just make sense to go ahead and have your exhaust fans blowing into an area that's already there as a natural filter rather than, and still having to do some additional planning. There's a lot that goes into this. Does the maximum lot coverage not just now include the, because this would go to your density, okay? And I haven't even gotten to density as far as the neighborhood, but the density on the farm, maybe 50% of those hard surfaces that at any other planning and zoning level would be considered impervious. But you take that into account on the density, and that way we don't have some way someone found, a way to get 6 houses on 20 acres and it's butted right up next to somebody. And then you say, that's just on a residential, same as we were talking about before. If it's a family member and they want to sign off on it, that's their right. But if you're near a residential development, double that. Double it and use the same sliding scale. If they want to have 400 foot, if it's all wooded, then don't be as strict, but 800 foot. Then in the site plan review and approval would allow us to take into account the neighborhood. Because then you go ahead with a satellite photo, and let's say we draw 3 circles, whether it be 500 feet, 1,000 feet, and a half a mile radius around it. And let's look at the overall neighborhood, because a lot of those farms, when you drive through, and I know the people that live on Backbone Road, don't like it, but a few of the times that I've been by, I mean, they have to. If you live there's so many people there, you keep them nice. But we set requirements for people that allow it to make sense for them to think of their neighbors, and if they don't, it's going to look like they were. You know what I mean? So we're going to be able to take density into account. And if it is a small farm, the definition of small farm has changed. And I'm sorry for everyone that just doesn't agree with that. But, I farm, and if someone decides I have a conflict of interest, then let me know and I won't vote on certain things. But as a farmer, I think I actually accurately represent the majority of this county. This is an agricultural-based community. And I don't think it's fair that the land that I've been able to maintain, keep, and acquire, because I'm not from a family farm, no one gave me my land, okay? That I can't hand that down to my children if they want to do the same thing. So, you know, do we put 130,000? 130,000 square foot would stop the largest four-house farm from going in, based on square foot, and we review it from there. And then on top of it, because I see what Kevin's saying, well, a poorly placed house, maybe we say anything within 800 foot of a neighborhood, we want to review. And honestly, I mean, I don't know how many, I'd really like to see the majority of them going in. But we can get descriptive on what we want to review, and I think as a planning commission, we could actually try and make sense, because honestly, you know, everyone's gonna end up being in this county one way or the other, and we've gotta coexist. And shutting people down from their property rights, I'm sorry, is not the American way. But also just shoving it in your neighbor's face isn't the right thing to do either. So we've got to be responsible to each other. But I think the way that we start, I'm not saying we can't get more strict. If we went through and I mean, I got 2 pages, so I got through.
When do you think we as the 7 people would, and with the staff writing things and us reviewing it and rewriting it, et cetera, how many months do you think it's gonna take us to get that ready for to go to the commissioners and then come back and have a public hearing, et cetera?
I mean, as far as just site plan review, we could get that approved just as fast as we could have moratorium.
Can't do it because in the state it's regulated.
But, and under. we
You're
would
not gonna
have
get,
to
I'm
have-
sorry, but I really think
Wait a
it,
minute,
Go ahead.
let me see if I understand it correctly. We would have to come to agreement on all of these setbacks that you're talking about and these buffers.
Not
To
to
be
have
able
a
to
review.
include that in our site plan review, because what Tom and Gary said was that under the current regulations, if we have a site plan, as long as they do whatever they're doing for their permits now, we would have to approve it. We couldn't set our own, say, you're not being nice to your neighbor, we don't approve
Exactly,
it.
exactly. It's
That's not
legal.
true.
Ask them,
That's
that's what they
illegal.
told me when I asked, just asked them to see. Is
Okay,
that not what
so,
you told
so
me?
if we say over 130,000 square foot, it would require site plan approval. That person would have the option, if we didn't approve it, to back their plan down below 130,000 square foot and submit that for approval without needing our input.
That's not
and-
currently in the regulation.
That's right. It's illegal.
In order to be able to.
These 57
That's just 3 sentences, and honestly, I don't know how long it would take the county attorney to figure something out. But how long would it take us to go ahead and enact a moratorium with it around?
Well, the problem.
Not the same.
The problem is you're telling a guy he's got to come to you with a site plan, but you're not giving him the criteria to come to it with. And they've got to have a criteria to come to with the expectation that it's gonna get approved. You can't say, come in here with a site plan and we'll draw it for you.
I think I know where Carol was going with it. By the time we come up with any regulations, as fast as we, moving as fast as we can, we're talking about 3 or 4 months or 4 or 5 months.
Listening to the discussion.
These 67 houses will have to be all built, and there'll be another 60 in line, possibly. So we're not gonna catch these 67 houses that caused all this
How long would it
uproar.
take, we should have had the county attorney here for the recent place, how long would it take to enact a moratorium?
I think, I mean, if the county commissioners are willing to do a moratorium, that.
I guarantee you, if we're gonna present them with that, you will have a line outside of your office tomorrow.
Right.
Because everyone's gonna wanna file notice of intent, and they're gonna wanna submit application, because the site plan's not due upon application, correct? Pay for your application, and you have a period to.
Moratorium is not gonna apply to somebody that has a vested interest in money spent. You have to exempt them.
Right, but.
So these
when-
67 are done anyway?
I don't know, I mean, whenever I've seen moratoriums in the works of planning over the years, we put in new regulations, these people that have something already in the works are probably gonna be exempted. You can't tell somebody who spent all this money in engineering and stormwater and even bought the property.
But
that-
technically, if someone just bought the property with the intent to do it, they've already started the process. And I guess my point is, the county commissioners would have to, I guarantee you, they're gonna want public comment, they don't want to hold it.
And if they're depending on the
And then
Polk House pay off that property they just bought, they're gonna be in trouble.
Correct, and that's why, and here's what I see in moratoriums, this is my love of moratoriums comes from Newark, Delaware. Their planning commission decided to put a moratorium, and it has to, legally, I think it came down that if they didn't give a date, that it was null and void, that you could technically go through and submit your application. So there was a time frame that was involved.
Yeah, I think that's.
Law, the attorneys determined what it was, and it's not the short time frame that I think might happen. I want to believe that it ended up being 6 months, and so much terrible approval applications went in for developments that never would have happened had they just said, here's what we want to do. We
Yep.
want to slow it down a little bit. We want to review the ones that are the most, I mean, I see the stickers and everything, but we've got, right here, I'm guessing 10 farms of the 67 that are well above, that would be a minimum of 10 reviews. And again, say we would like to do it, base it on a square footage number, and base it off of, we want to review it if you're 1,000 foot from a subdivision or 600 foot from a home, we just want to see it. And that way it covers kind of what Kevin's saying. If it's right next to someone's house and the lady's, she's retired and wants to enjoy it, and then all of a sudden she's going to have 4, we want to make sure.
What's going
we're
to happen if
technically-
we say, please don't do that? What's going to happen?
What I'm saying is they don't have, we're changing it.
Please, what is it?
Well, let me answer.
Please don't do that.
You're not saying please don't do that. You're saying that you are not inherently allowed to build more than this square footage, or this close to a subdivision, or this close to a non-participating house without site plan
We
approval.
haven't done a zoning code change. We can't do that.
You can do it just as fast as you can in a moratorium, I guarantee it. I guarantee you that a moratorium.
Gary, what can we do then to slow this legally? What can we do to slow it? Tell us.
I mean, the county commissioners would be the ones that would have to do a moratorium. I don't know what the chances of that are.
What could we do to get them to slow it?
Let us review it.
Don't call it a
Request that we
moratorium.
review it.
Call it-
Whatever you do, I think is gonna have to require a text amendment to the zoning code, and that is gonna take some time.
When you're talking about a moratorium, and I know, I go back to what I see
Can
online.
we be overworked
When-
and not able to accept more applications at this point?
When the Critical Area Commission passed their
I
rules,
think politically, that's something that we're willing to say.
when the Critical Area Commission passed their rules, we had people submitting all kinds of subdivisions, some of them just crazy ideas, just to get the lots on record. And once you start talking about a moratorium, people are gonna bring in, I want this many houses in advance.
And they can't be held to the new regulations. Once they submit the application, they are tied to the old regulations because you can't change their setbacks and their laws and zoning with it in there. That's why I'm saying it just really makes sense to
So what
say.
do we do to get this moving? I mean, what do we do?
I think.
We sit in the room, we go line by line of the ordinance we have, we submit the changes and the words. We do it just like we did the wind ordinance, and we go through there and we make a tough decisions and we move on.
And guess what? That ended up being, that ended up being how many years? And because during that time, everyone gets to do, they're not gonna be happy if we decide to do that. And I don't think that's fair to them. They've asked us to actually do something. And as far as I'm concerned, the majority of it just came to the final bluff that came down from a
But I
letter
don't-
from across the bay.
I don't
and
think the
down river.
commissioners are gonna give you the ability to have carte blanche over somebody's site plan. You're gonna have to come up with parameters that they have to meet
Well, let's
to submit the
let's,
plan.
so let's come up with the parameters.
Like a template or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So you have like sections of 3 or 4 different templates, that there's so many square feet, this is the template for that one. And then you just see how well they fit into it, and then they can ask for exception and move on from there. But at least gives you a framework to work from.
During TAC hearings and stuff like that, through the process of subdivisions, okay? They actually go through the process and they get feedback from everyone to know what they really should be going for, and hey, you missed this. And everyone's ideas come together, and it doesn't work like that. It's not a real world to try and template our industry into a county that I guarantee you has an unlimited number. Unless they're in a subdivision, there isn't one property that's the same shape or size throughout the whole county. And not only just the size, where are the ditches, where are your waterways, where are your tree lines? I mean, we've got non-tidal wetlands to take into consideration. There's just a ton of stuff. And like I said, I want to do it by myself. And I mean, it's just one of those things where you do it. You have a TAC hearing once a week, every other week.
Whenever we have.
Once a month.
Because we're in Somerset County, because we make things sometimes, a little more difficult than they have to be. But I think if someone comes through, we say, listen, you submit your application then, tough, if you don't like it, we'll talk to you and maybe do this. We'll talk to you in 4 weeks after, you can't be heard the next date, just like you do everything else. You've gotta have it in by a certain date, and we'll hear this many, and that's it. And maybe it's 2. Maybe it's 4, depending on the size, or maybe we say, we'll review this many square feet per meeting maximum, and you have your slow down, but at least there's some sense to it, so people can say, okay, they're doing this. I think if we do something that makes sense, we can protect our neighborhoods and our
Would that really
residential areas.
slow it? Because if they've come before us, they're under the old.
I think what we really need to do is schedule another meeting, a work session in a couple of weeks. But we also need to take the existing zoning rules, which are similar all down the shore. Ours are really actually more strict. To start with, we need to put in setbacks from the road, setbacks from the property line, setbacks from non-participating, as we call it, in the residences, where we're going to put the discharge fans so many feet away from house. I think we need to set up some guidelines and go from there. There's a lot of things we can set on those guidelines that will cover what we're talking about here, I believe. And you got to start somewhere. And it doesn't seem like we're getting a lot of ideas. And I hope you all understand the way we operate. We don't hold barred as far as talking to each other about these things. We can probably figure that out. On the other hand, it's a good group, and they do come up with good stuff. And I think we really need to start with something, as I was saying, keep it something stupid or something like that. Start with a plan and go from there. The issue really is the annoyance to neighbors and people with their houses. Of the 67 houses that are going up in Somerset County, there's probably, most of them are not miling a soul. Some of them are clear out in the middle of the field, and God knows they're not miling a soul. Those we don't even need to consider, and most of them are like that. The ones that are problems is the ones that brought all this to our attention. There also is a density problem with area of the county that has a whole lot of poultry houses on it. I mean, it's a density problem. You can look at it and see. Should they add more chicken houses adjacent to that? You know, again, I said it at the original meeting, and I say it now. This is not, number one, just a Somerset County problem. It is not just a planning and zoning problem. It is an industry problem. And the industry has put together a suggestion. DPI came out with this non-binding suggestion. And if they're going to come out with these suggestions, then while they're not binding legal, morally, if you want to use that term loosely, they are bound by what they put out. If not, they wasted their paper and their time. And I think we can come up with, some parameters that we can work within. And I don't know, what we're talking about. I know we all know something about this business. 3 of us here have spent our whole life in agriculture. And again, I've told everybody before, I am not a chicken house fan. A fan of chicken houses, let's put it that way.
You're much quieter than chicken houses.
I started teaching school to get out of a chicken house, so if you ever taught school, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, that's where I think we are on this, and I think we can close this discussion unless somebody else has something to say, and we have one other issue we'd like to talk about.
Can you get back to us at our planning session on what these 67 houses that permitted? What legally we can do to any of it?
Yep.
I mean, if the 67 houses are permitted and we can't make them plant a taller tree or back the fan up to 20 feet before the foundation's poured, you know, those are things we need to know.
Jim Porter actually, I think, answered that question in one of our meetings.
If they're bothering anybody,
Yeah.
you know, if they're bothering anybody, it's up to them not to do it. I know we're putting faith in people to do right, and a lot of people don't do right. Any other discussion on that, Kevin?
No, I'm speechless.
All right. Can we close this discussion for now and plan on final action? Do you have a date?
We'll accommodate whatever date you
Can you talk up? I'm sorry, we can't hear again. Sorry, we can't hear.
We're setting dates.
We're trying to come up with a date for our next session for this, our work session on Fulton House.
You're an interested party, we'll let you know.
Will we be allowed to comment and be part of the discussion at that one?
We don't know. We don't know.
If you have this,
Are we allowed to have closed work sessions?
No.
Okay. I mean, not just for the sake of the
We've got a
quiet
spot.
part of it, and, you know.
if anybody has any suggestion, at this point, I got 45 pages that, I don't have any, well, but that thing today, that I skimmed through really quickly. But so far, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have not gotten concrete suggestions what we may do for this ordinance. We've got a lot of things, we don't like this, we don't like that, but if you come up with something, a recommendation to us, it will be considered, believe me.
It's in there. We sent you a temple ordinance, a template. We sent you tons of information on public health.
No, I understand it.
We asked for a health ordinance, not setback.